Mm.
Hello and welcome to our fifth episode of the Writing Vikings. I'm Lizzie and this is Vandela, and today we're going to talk to you a bit about our experiences of tackling NaNoWriMo this year.
Phew. It's been such a month. Okay.
Yeah,
Should we yeah, do you want to dive into the fun
absolutely.
fact you wanted to share before?
Absolutely. So we have a new little suggestion. At the beginning of each episode, we want to share with you a little historical tidbit, like an artifact or something that we find a little bit interesting, or feels like it has some kind of story behind it or something like that.
Mhm.
So I'm going to share one with you today, and if you like it, let us know and we can continue in future episodes. So today I'm going to share with you something that I found when I was in the History Museum in Stockholm a few months back. And in one of their cabinets, in a section that is to do with kind of like magic and religion and belief, they have a collection of rune sheets that are actually curse tablets. And this one I find interesting because it has quite a long inscription on it. It was found in Högstena kyrkogård, so in a churchyard in Västergötland. And the actual inscription
In
on it,
Sweden.
yeah, in Sweden. So the inscription in runes says, obviously this is a translation to English because the runes literally translate to Old Swedish, but it's the actual runes say, I use magical powers against the spirit, against the walking, against the riding, against the running, against the sitting, against the sinking, against the traveling, against the flying spirit. Everything shall lose its vitality and die.
Gosh, does it end like that?
Yep, that is all it says.
Everything will die. All right.
Yeah, but
All right, fair
it's specifically against evil spirits. So I'm kind of like, I'm wondering, like, there's a lot of evil spirits. What are all these evil spirits doing, and why do you need to incant against them in all these different forms?
Yeah. Does it say from which year?
Um, no, all it says in the inscription, because it's like this is available on Historiska Museum's website. All it says is the year that it was found, which was 1920, which is not the year it was written,
Doesn't say any.
obviously.
Yeah, that doesn't. But does it
And
so which can you actually go and see these tablets
yeah,
at
it's on display in the museum.
and which section did you say it was in, or
It's
they
in
were
the
in?
section on religion and belief. And
And
what I
that's not a
also find
specific
is,
year or
what did you
anything.
say?
That's not a specific time
No,
period.
no, it's Viking. It's in the Viking section.
Okay, it is.
Yeah,
How did I not see? Is this in the Viking exhibition?
yeah, but there's a lot of stuff in that exhibition, to be
Oh my
fair.
God, it is so. It's the biggest Viking exhibition in the world, I think.
Yeah. So if you
And
happen to be in
years.
Stockholm at some point, you should definitely, and have an interest in Viking history, definitely go to the History Museum's exhibition.
What
Uh,
did you think of that exhibition actually? Because I've
I
been twice.
really like it, but I also did an ethnographic study in there, so I've spent a lot of time in that
Right,
exhibition.
fair.
It's quite a
No,
nice place to hang around, but no, I just back to this tablet. There's one extra fun thing is that in the English translation it says I use magic powers, but in the Swedish translation and in the actual runes it says I galder, which is galder
um,
is a type of singing magic.
yeah,
Um, which so it's not
yeah.
just actually using magical powers, it's actually a
No,
specific kind of
yeah,
magic.
it's Viking magic.
Yeah.
Um, which totally does not feature in my book. No, but Galdr is like yeah, it's singing magic. I don't know how else you sing the spells.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah.
theories that it might be related to tuning, which is like the high-pitched herding call singing that I'm also studying.
But you
But
can totally listen. You can hear more about that in episode 1, I think. We talk about it. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and I'll probably talk about it again at some point. But that is only speculation. There's no kind of direct evidence that it might be linked. It's just more that a lot of people, when they hear tuning, they think that this sounds really magical and mystical, and people have speculated.
So,
Um,
yeah.
in any case. But anyway, shall we get on to the actual topic of today's podcast?
Yeah, I think we should. Do you want to, should we make it clear that both of us have finished
Yes.
our
I
50
actually,
classes?
before we do that, I think we should give a brief little explanation for those people who don't actually know
Right.
what NaNoWriMo is, what it is, because somebody actually asked me after another podcast, what is nano?
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
How do you not know? No, but seriously. No, that's so there's a very high possibility that a lot of our listeners don't know what NaNoWriMo is, and that's totally okay. But I totally think we should do a brief explanation. Do you want to go for it, or?
Yeah. So NaNoWriMo is basically a challenge that happens every year. I think it's been going on for over 20 years now. That basically, I remember hearing about it when I was a teenager. So it must be almost 20 years. So it basically, the challenge is to write 50,000 words in November, and it can be 50,000 words of anything really. And there's
Prose is, I think,
the most common. Yeah.
I think what they try to encourage is that 50,000 words is a rough first draft of a novel. Now, keep in mind, we both write fantasy, and although it's possible to write fantasy in 50,000 words, it tends to be, more than 100,000. So
yes, so 50,000 words equates to about a 200-page novel. That's right. Yeah,
something like that, I think.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
So fantasy, your average fantasy is going to be twice that length, probably. Maybe more.
Actually, there's a really good way of calculating this out. So there's about 350 words per page in a normal paperback. So if you take 50,000 divided by 350, oh, why did it multiply? You should get about the amount of pages. It would be about 150 pages, like a paperback of 150 pages, according to my calculator. But then that 350 word amount or count estimate, I don't know where I've gotten that from, so it might be totally made up. But all right, yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Well, that kind of is the description.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's National Novel Writing Month. That's what it stands for. It's always in November, and 50,000 words equates to what? 1,667 words in a day.
Yeah.
So that was basically our daily goal for all of November.
Yeah. And both of us, we are both quite proud of ourselves that it is not quite the end of November and we both finished. We actually both finished on the same day. So we were sat together, and then we were having a writing session, and then you just kind of looked up from your screen and was like, I'm done. And I was like, hold on, I've got 1,000 words left. Can we celebrate in like half an hour?
Yeah, and I think it took you 20 minutes and then you were done. This was so we're recording on the 28th of November, and we finished last Tuesday, so it was the 22nd of November. But that's extreme. I've tried Nano twice before. I've never succeeded. Both of those times I was like, I think I was trying to revise or edit during Nano instead of drafting. So I failed because I went about it as a Nano rebel, which I think is totally a way to go, but it was not the way to go for me at the time. But whatever. But we succeeded, which was quite fun.
Yeah, and I've also attempted to do Nano a couple of times on and off. I think I tried once when I was a teenager, failed it. And then I've tried a couple of times in Novembers in recent years. And I think I've never gotten past more than 1 or 2 days because I've gone in without plans, because I've been like, no, I'm supposed to plan and do everything in November. And it just doesn't work for me. I'm definitely a planner. So I would get through like a couple of pages and be like, I don't know where I'm going. But I think the biggest difference this year is that I've been connected to a community of other people that are also doing Nano, because I wasn't intending to do it. I was like, I've tried to do this before, it's not going to work. And then so many people around me were like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then I think it was at the beginning of September or something. And I was like, well, I'm getting kind of tired of the project I'm doing at the moment. So there's 2 months. If I just plan for those 2 months, I will have a plan and then I can see what happens. And then once you tell a group of people who are also doing nano that you're going to do it, you're
They don't have
kind of
a
a
choice
lot more
but to.
bound to it, I find.
Oh yeah, you kind of have to do it. I was going to say that as well. I think the fact that we're on the same Zoom call in the mornings, and we basically do like 2 hours of writing before the rest of our days starts. There is no excuse. There really is no excuse. And I think that has helped immensely. I think without the community and without the accountability, it would never have happened, because those are two things that I didn't have the last two times I've tried it. I didn't have I did have a community of writers, but not of writers that were all doing NaNoWriMo. And I also just didn't have the accountability of checking in every day, face to face, or well, on Zoom, but so that definitely played a big part in it.
Yeah, so I'd say that's a big shout out and thank you to Stockholm Writers Network, because this
Yeah.
community would not have formed without that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So I have a question for you regarding Nano. Can I
Do I need to be afraid?
No, no, it's just a simple question. I was gonna ask you if you drafted a book from beginning till end, like from the opening image to the closing image.
Do you mean did I draft during NaNoWriMo or did I plan?
Did you draft?
Okay, so yes,
Well, you can say if you
and
plotted up until the end as well. I don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah, exactly. So I
Go for
plotted
it.
up until the end before writing. And I can't quite say that I drafted all the way from start to finish completely. So what happened was I intended to start and then work chronologically through the book. And I think that worked up until I got to maybe about a bit before the midpoint. And then what happened was I mean, even a bit before the midpoint, so about halfway through, I was realizing that I had flaws in my plot and I was fighting the urge to go back and change things because I was like, I'm not going to get words out if I go back and like rewrite stuff now. So I was making little notes at the end of each chapter. And then something happened, like when I got towards the build up for the midpoint, when I was like, because my character is basically going to different locations. And when she got to this one location, I was like, I literally have no idea what is going on here. I know what she needs to do here, but I was like, I I I don't know. I hadn't really lived the moment very well whilst I've been plotting. So I kind of wrote through something of that didn't feel particularly great. And then when I got to the end of that, I suddenly had an epiphany of what should have happened there. And I was like, but I'm not rewriting those 10,000 words or whatever right now. And at that point, I was like, but I need to write them to write the next few scenes. So that was the point where I started jumping ahead and I started filling in the gaps for moments that I knew were likely to happen later on, because the closer I got to the end, the fuzzier I was, and the more I felt like things were going to be affected by plot changes later on that I needed to do before I could solve. So basically, I wrote as much as I felt like I knew and left holes where I knew I was uncertain in the plot. I did, like, chronologically wise, with jumping and hopping over to stuff, I did get to kind of the beginning of the third act.
Okay.
I'd say. But there are holes. Many holes.
But then you can go back and revise and you can figure out how to fill those holes. Like that's the point of revision. So yeah. I don't again, everyone's drafting process is completely different. So like you do you.
Yeah. So would you like to answer that question? Because obviously you talked about it to me, but
yeah, sure. So I knew that I was only going to write half the book, like the first half of the novel, and I only plotted up until the midpoint because so mine is a heist story, and they're basically going from Sweden to from Stockholm to Prague, and there's a point. The midpoint takes place in Prague, and I don't know what this place looks like, and I was really struggling during I wanted to plot the whole novel, but only write the first 50,000 words for Nano. But even during plotting, during like September and October, I was struggling to, I kind of knew the third act, but I was struggling with the sort of second half of the second act. So the sort of after the midpoint up until the third act. And so I decided actually to just plot it up until the midpoint. And then I need to do some research in Prague, which I will do in January. Me and my partner, we're going to Prague to do a bit of research. And so I plotted up until the midpoint and I wrote up until the midpoint. And I'm actually really impressed. I don't know if I can say I'm impressed with myself, but when I reached 50,000 words, I was in the middle of a scene of the last scene that I'd plotted. So I estimated, I think, the amount of words quite well. I will say though that the midpoint for me won't really be a one action beat. It will be a couple of scenes. So I'd say I'm about 45% into the book. But that's 50,000 words, and I'm estimating this book to be around 120,000 words. So I already know that there are 4 chapters that need to go that I just need to cut because I had realizations while I was writing. So I won't be using all of those 50,000 words, but no, so I basically achieved what I was planning on achieving during Nano. So yeah, I only did half the book.
Yeah, so I'm gonna shoot another question in your direction. So my question for you is, how did the experience of writing for Nano differ from your normal writing habits?
I don't even know what my normal writing habits are, because the first book you write is a learning curve, right? And I've been working on my last book it's with beta readers now, and I've been working on that I started sort of plotting or planning it in 2019. So I've been working on it for 3 years, I'd say. Yeah, more or less. And that whole process was a mess. I wrote a very vague first draft and I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to, with help of my critique partners, go back, rethink, and redraft the whole thing. And then I did revisions, and then I did revisions again, and then so that was just a whole mess. Whereas this time I approached it in a way that I think suits me much better now that I've kind of figured out what kind of writer I am. I'm a plotter, a hardcore plotter. So I plotted excessively during September, October, which meant that I just drafted for all of November without getting stuck, without hitting sort of what's it called, writer's block. And I think this is the way I'd like to work in the future. However, I actually exhausted myself, because one day in the first week, I think, or in the second week, I reached 4,000 words in one day, because I had a work lesson that got cancelled, so I had nothing else to do but to write. And when you've hit a higher word count than what your daily goal is, suddenly it becomes like, well, why shouldn't I be able to write this many words every day? And so my daily writing goal became like over 2,000 words. And I don't actually think, when you've only got about 2 hours to write per day, that's not healthy for your like creative juices. I don't know. So it is definitely something that works for Nano, but I don't think when you study or when you work, I don't think that's doable. So I think that's what would differ from my normal quotation marks normal writing. What did you say? Writing habits?
Writing habits, I think. I said.
So I think that's what would differ. However, the plotting, I think that's the way I'm going to approach every every project from now on, because it just helped so much.
Yeah,
I don't know if that answers your question.
no,
I
definitely.
don't have any set writing habits. I'm still trying to figure those out. So
Everything's vague. I'm in the same place, and like everything
yeah.
I do is a whole new learning stuff, because it's like I'm definitely also a plotter. I just haven't figured out how to plot effectively yet. Because I always
that I have done.
thing
That
is
I
I
have
always
done.
think that I have plotted effectively, and then I start writing and I'm like, oh.
Oh, I will say, there will always be things that you cannot think of until you start writing. Like you will always think of things when you start writing, because there's some things that creatively you just, I don't know, come up with things as you're writing that you just don't think of while you're plotting, and they will inevitably change things that you wrote earlier on in the novel. Like, I don't know, I think that's impossible. No matter how much you plot, I think you'll still think of things during the process of drafting.
So I would absolutely agree with that, and that is something that I have been learning over the past month, and I think has been the most valuable thing for me, because I was stuck into a bit of a habit before of wanting like each chapter I write to be perfect before I move on to the next chapter. And I got so stuck in the editing, so I would write it out and then go back and edit. And then I'd move a few chapters on and realize that I'm having to change the plot. So everything that I've just tried to make perfect, I'm going to have to change anyway. And I'd get stuck in this loop. But this month has been really helpful for me, because I've just had to force myself to like turn off the thing that wants to go back and change things, so that I'm like, I can make notes of stuff that I want to change, but I'm not actually allowed to change things until I've like written my way through as much as I can, because then I get a bigger picture of like which things do I need to change, and which stuff is just that I need to flesh something out to understand things more. And that has been very, very helpful. I mean, my actual words on the page, they look atrocious. Like my grammar, my spelling, my everything. It's like, it's like word vomit deluxe. but it's like, I guess I see it in a way as kind of like, it's kind of like extended plotting in a way. For me, I feel it's like trying to tell yourself the story in a slightly more fleshed out manner than you can in like 2 or 3 sides of A4, so that you can then more concisely tell it in 2 or 3 sides of A4, so then you can write it in a prettier way. Is how I felt. Anyway,
I use the little notes section of Scrivener, where I would be like, I'd think of something, and then I'd just be like, mention this in chapter whatever, some previous chapter, and then I'd be, even if it was previous, like even if it was earlier on in the same scene I was writing, I didn't want to go back like a few rows, so I'd just be like, change this blah blah until later, and then get back to it. And I don't know what I just said, that made no sense.
it made sense.
But basically I just take notes of what I would want to change from the things I'd already written, if that makes sense, instead of going back to change.
I just wrote lots of capital letters at the bottom of the chapter.
Oh, fair enough.
I think I haven't quite figured out where the notes section is.
I will show you. Scrivener is, I love Scrivener. I will show you where the notes section is. It's like a right little sidebar thing. Oh, whatever, we'll go through it some other time. I will say that I did use capital letters in the middle of the manuscript. If I couldn't think of how to describe something, or I didn't actually know what it looked like in my head, I'd just be like, description castle, or description tavern, and then fix that later on, just to get on with it.
One of my like personal marks in whilst I'm writing is just to write in capital letters something, so that you just read through the text and then it's just like something.
I've heard that apparently like TK, the combination TK, because it doesn't exist in any English word. If you just go Command F TK, then that should bring out all the points in your manuscript where you basically like placeholders. I heard a friend, my critique partner, use the word cookie, because cookies aren't likely to show up like in the world you're writing about. So but I literally just I tend to just go XXX, because like whenever do you write triple X, like no. So
I'm now really tempted to write some kind of project where all the obscure terminology is actually there. So there's place names that begin with TK and they're eating cookies.
Don't be like that.
It's gonna be a really boring script or a really boring novel, but it's just purely there to mess with trying to find things
It's
easily.
TK or KT, but I think it's TK. I don't know. Oh well, whatever. All right. Well, what if I throw that question back at you then?
Kind of did answer it.
Did you? Yeah, you
Yeah.
did. All right. Do you have another question? Or should
Yes.
I
Well,
look at
either of us can.
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
then
do
I'm gonna. I have a nice one for you. Did you have
okay.
any self-care practices in place?
uh I try. I try to keep going to the gym in the mornings, even though like just to start off the day on a good note. I will say though that I'm incredibly stressed at the moment at work, and the gym is the first thing to go. So I don't know if that's a self-care practice that works. Self-care is like meeting up with you and our third
Oh.
writing friend, Yasmin. That's like our Tuesday afternoons. That's like self-care to me. um, and we just sit and write and chat and eat, and that's like just a great afternoon in the week that I really value. I also did go on a writing retreat. I don't know if that counts as self-care, like in the middle of November. I don't know. I don't know. I like knitting, but I didn't knit anything during November. Like I didn't, because I was like, well, if you've got spare time, you might as well get some more words in. So I think I have self-care routines, possibly, but I did not use them during Nano. I did not use them. No, do you? Do you have self-care routines
I
or
have stuff.
practices?
I don't know that I specifically use them in conjunction with Nano, but I have certain things I have to do or I just don't function as a human being.
Yoga and tea?
Yeah, basically. But one thing that kind of helped me, I think, this month, just with my productivity in general, because I wasn't only drafting for Nano, I was also have been trying to write a first draft of my master's dissertation. So I have an extra like 30,000 words on top of the 50,000
Yeah.
words that actually have to sound good. Although I don't necessarily have to finish that by the end of the month. I'm on about like 16, 17,000 words of that at the moment. It's a bit like this. But I happened to join during November like an online Zen meditation group. And they have like group sessions like on Sundays and then different days during the week. And I've noticed that when I'm starting to feel a bit like overly tired and like overly kind of like wanting to cry at everything, if I just sit down for one of those and stare at a wall for an hour, I just feel better afterwards.
Do you meditate for a whole hour?
Yeah, you kind of have to. And like that's also again, it's accountability. I'm not sure I would do it if there wasn't like an online call to do it. But like just for like 10 minutes or so, it's a little bit of like a refresher, but it doesn't really reset. But actually meditating for a whole hour, I feel like a completely different person afterwards sometimes, or like sometimes my brain's just like, what's going on? But it just does something that has been very, very helpful, I find.
I've been to like meditation classes that, you know, it's been a session of like an hour and a half, which has been lovely back in England. But I couldn't sit for an hour and a half on my own, not a chance. Like 10 minutes maximum. And for the last 3 months, I don't think I've meditated any like at all. I do try to do like 10 to 15 minutes after the gym sometimes, but it just it has not, it's not. I even have in my bullet journal like a habits tracker, and the meditation column has just been empty. like I've not been able to tick those boxes for the last 3 or 4 months. But you know, whatever. Meditation is good though. Like it's
It can be difficult to just fit in. And yeah, for me, I've just experienced that, like, at times when I've felt really not in a good place in my life, the thing that has helped me more than even like counseling or talking to psychologists has been meditating. So for me, like, as soon as I'm feeling like overly, I know I need to put in something related to meditation in. So yeah, yeah.
we totally just went off writing there for a moment, but you know.
But everything's related. You need to take care of yourself.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
It is actually true. You do, and I think NaNoWriMo, I think as wonderful as it is of a challenge, I think a lot of people feel like they've failed Nano if they don't win. Like because you when you finish Nano, you get like your screen kind of like explodes with confetti and it's like 50,000 words, you're a NaNoWriMo winner. And that's great, but that's also kind of suggests that anyone who doesn't reach 50,000, even if you reach like 48,000, you're a loser, which, or like you've lost the challenge, which I think is a bit of shame. And I think it's important to remember that mental health always comes first. Like creative energy also comes first, I think, because I'm exhausted now. And I was planning to not do any writing for December. I was planning on researching for my next Viking fantasy. But I am exhausted. And I actually, if I'd been planning on writing throughout December, I would have been too tired to do so, actually. But I also need to remember that we finished Nano in like 3 weeks. And let's be real, we did compete against each other. Like, there's no point hiding this. I felt so pressured about your word count.
It was like on the first day, like, because basically I have quite a long commute to anywhere I go because I live in a little town that's like 1 to 2 hours out of like the major cities. So I write a lot on those buses. And on the first day, I was on a bus into Stockholm and I got like 2,000 extra words. And it was a day you had to work a little bit also, I think, or something. So
yes,
you couldn't.
and I was filling in beta. I was filling in beta feedback for one of our beta reading partners in our beta group. So I basically started off the first day doing something else than well, I did write my 1,667 words, but you wrote like 3,000.
Yeah, and then when I said how much I'd written, you were like, what?
Yeah. I thought I was on track, and this is the bizarre thing. I was on track, but then I was just competing with you and I was competing with myself, and this is what I mean. It's super important to remember that it's not a competition, actually. And I hate to say this, but Catherine was also like, is there a prize for the winner? And I was like, oh shit, like, and I was like, I can't let Lizzie, and it was ridiculous. And then on the chat, I was like, oh yeah, we're totally competing now. And Catherine was like egging us on, and it was just, I don't know. But my point is, it is actually really important to take care of yourself, because if you write 50,000 words in 1 month and then you're just exhausted and can't do anything until the next NaNoWriMo or Camp Nano in April or June or whatever, like it's not worth it. So
no,
I think
like
really
everybody's always at different places in their lives, and it's like, yes, whatever amount you did manage to get through, that is the amount that was appropriate for you at this time. Like for me, I was only able to do it, I think, if I didn't have stupidly long commutes everywhere, I don't know if I would have gotten it done, because it's a lot harder to make time when you're at home and you have things to do or whilst you're working than yeah.
And I need to point out that I don't actually work full time. I do work. I have 2 jobs, but neither of them add up to, like, they don't add up to a full-time job. So I do have those 2 hours. 4 out of 7 mornings in the week, I've got 2 hours to write. And once I have everything plotted, I actually type about 2,000 words in 2 hours. So in a way, like, you need to remember, if you work full time, or if you study full time, or even if you don't study or work full time and you just got a lot on your plate, like in general, even if you don't have a lot on your plate, but you can't get those words in, like it's not about this is what I think is such a shame, because I think NaNoWriMo is a great initiative to get people to write. I totally support it. I thought it was so much fun, but also you need to measure a challenge like this, and to measure word count is actually the easiest way to go about it. But for everyone, it's not about the word count. For someone, it might be measuring the amount of time you spent on it, or the quality of your writing instead of the quantity. And so it's very hard to measure how successful you are at writing the first draft of something. I mean, my words they're rubbish. They're really, really bad. I've placeholders everywhere where it just says something, just description, like food or clothes, because I you know, and so although I think it is a very easy to measure something with a word count, I don't think it's not all about the word count. It really isn't. And I think
it really
go on.
It really depends what kind of writer you are also. Like, both of us are trying to hash out like the flesh, not the flesh, like the bones of the story, whereas some people do work more productively with writing and editing as they go along, and then by the end they can have something that's a bit more polished. Like, I've heard some authors say that they do that, and if they do that, it's going to take a longer time to get that word count up, but then you're also probably going to spend less time editing later on. And some people, maybe what they need to be doing during Nano is editing, or like actually making things sound nice. And when you do that, it also takes a longer time. So you're not going to get the crazy leaps in the word count. And I guess it's easy to get disheartened by that, but that's not the point. It's to use the time to do what works for you, I guess.
Yeah, and I think also it's not, you don't have to do NaNoWriMo. Like, there's a lot of people get super motivated, which I think is great. And then everyone, once Preptober comes around, like prepping during October, it's everyone's going on, are you doing NaNoWriMo? I'm doing NaNoWriMo, preparing for NaNoWriMo, and it's like super exciting. But like, you don't have to do it if it doesn't suit you. Like, if that way of drafting is not your way to go, and if you actually just feel let down or just disheartened by not managing to get those 50,000 words, like if that's not your a process that works for you, then like, you don't have to do it. It doesn't matter how much people write about it on social media or whatever, like, you really don't have to do it. Someone posted about it last year, actually bringing it up on Instagram, I think, like, I'm not doing NaNoWriMo this year, and that's okay. And I thought that was such a good post. I might try and find it actually, and put it in the show notes, because I thought that was such a good pep talk for anyone who didn't actually feel like doing NaNoWriMo was their cup of tea. And I think that's important to remember as well.
Yeah. So we've talked about motivation for a little while. Do you have any other
I do have a question for you.
Yep.
Have you kept going since you hit that 50,000 mark, or have you just dropped it and taken a break?
I have not kept writing on the draft because I reached a point where, like, whatever I was going to write after that was going to be so weak because there were so many holes in the plot that it just wasn't worth doing. So when I wrote hit 50, I did kind of accept that I keep adding on one extra word a day because there's these stupid badges on the Nano's site.
Oh my God, the badges.
They're like, I'm so frustrated because I achieved my goal, but there are two badges, and one is that you have updated every day of your goal, and another is that you hit your target every day of your goal, and those do not unlock when you actually reach your goal number of 50,000.
Oh my God,
they unlock at the end date of your goal, so it's not the 30th. So I have to keep like adding in like an extra word. So just I mean, you don't have to get all the badges, but I'm feeling like a total perfectionist with this, and I have worked so hard. I want all those badges.
I love how Yasmin on the first day, she's like, I didn't write on the first day, and that was the best badge. It was the only badge with a cup. or a mug or whatever. So funny. But I just dropped that. You know what does irritate me though? I can go in and look at the graph, and it's like super steep, and you can see that I'm like above the sort of there's a suggested like path to completion or path to something, or to victory, I don't know. And my draft is like above that, and it's going really well. And then once I've hit 50,000, I did touch it the day. I did keep writing a little bit the day after, because I wanted to finish the scene I was writing. But then after that, it's just flat, and I'm like, all right, great. And it's just so obvious. It's like a plateau, and I just can't be bothered to care about it. But yeah, so there's that.
But I will say that whilst I haven't kept on doing the draft, I have gone back and been writing character profiles. And I mean, technically, the length of the profiles I've been writing, I've still been writing like 1,000 to 2,000 words a day, but it's just not things that directly show in the word count of the, it's not directly there in the story. And I think, again, this is something that has been helpful, that I have gone and drafted out the story in this way, because like now I know what characters are going to turn up, and now I know what characters I need to maybe make more important or more present, or which characters I actually need to develop more. Whereas before I might have been like, oh, she's going to a town, I need to write all the people that are in this town and decide on personalities and then figure out who's going to be important. No, I don't actually need to do that. I need to write the story, see who's important, and then figure out why they're important. So that's been super helpful. So I'm going through and I've made some really fun epiphanies. Like I got so hooked into writing like one profile on Saturday that I just could not be interrupted. I was like, every time somebody like tried to talk to me, I was like, oh
yeah, I remember when we met up on Saturday, you were on a roll. Even when I showed up, you were like, I'm gonna keep going with this. I was like, okay. No, that's I did realize as I was writing, I think sometimes when you get so caught up in world building and researching, especially because I do historical fantasy, so there's always an element of history that I need to research, and then world building that I need to do. And you want to research everything, and you want to world build everything. And sometimes you don't know what you need to research until you stumble upon that moment while you're drafting. So I've actually done in capital letters as well. I've written like research or world build, and then I've taken notes of in a different file in Scrivener saying like things I need to world build or things I need to research. And not having researched them in advance, I don't think it's impacted the story to the point where I need to go back and change loads of things. But I think that's it's going to be fun diving back into that before revisions, so that I know what to add in. But also I lost my train of thought. Yeah, no, I don't know what else I was going to say. I'm so tired, can you tell?
It's fine. I've got a nice question for you. I mean, I said the last one was a nice question, and then we went on a rant about taking care of yourself for a while. But this is a similar line. Have you rewarded yourself in any way?
Yes, I have. And do you know why I have? Because when I finished revising and editing my previous book, I was going to reward myself with this particular book about, well, the prose edda. So a book of a Swedish translation of the original Norse myths that Snorri Sturluson wrote. And I didn't get it for myself. I don't know why. I just didn't treat myself to it. I think I was too distracted by plotting for Nano, and it just didn't happen. But I bought it. I bought it now that I bought it during Black Friday. So I think this is actually the perfect timing, because now I'm diving back into the Viking story to plot book 2, and I'm still waiting for beta readers for book 1, and now I can just research Norse mythology and the deities of the sort of Norse religion. So I'm very happy that is, I'm waiting for it to arrive in the post, and I'm happy to dive into that. I did reward myself. I really did. Yeah. Did you?
I didn't have anything that I was planning to reward myself with. However, I might have had an experience yesterday that retrospectively was a reward without it being a reward, in that I bought myself some new tea equipment.
Oh, that's a good reward.
Over,
Especially since it's like unrelated to writing. Mine
yeah.
was like, here's the reward, but it's also a resource that you need for the next one, you know? But getting tea supplies and equipment is lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, but also, to be fair, I feel like tea is like essential to my writing process in a way. Like I get so much inspiration when I'm just sat and drinking tea. And or like if I have like something warm to drink whilst I'm working, like my brain chugs a little faster than it would otherwise.
I think it might be worth telling our listeners that when we write on Tuesdays at the university, we meet up in like this study. It's not a library, but it's like a study space. Then we so Yasmin and I bring a thermos each of hot water, and you bring tea leaves, and you bring these little like cups of china or like ceramic tea drinking bowls. They're not even cups, they're like bowls.
Yeah.
And you brew the tea, you brew the tea like in the middle of uni, like in this study space. And like I don't know what people think of us, but we drink tea like out of cups, not like paper cups, or buy our tea with like tea bags and stuff. We brew like tea leaves. Like people must think we're just so strange, but
I hope maybe they'll learn something. I hope they'll learn something.
it's the best way to drink tea. It has changed my tea drinking, I don't know, habits, routine. It hasn't really, because I still drink this like normal or like, Western tea at home. Like, but you drink like proper tea, which is really nice. And it's nice to be part of that because it tastes really good.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions before we start rounding off?
No, I did have one question, like, which basically read, were you stressed during Nano? But I mean,
I think we've kind of covered.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I was stressed, but I also had a lot of fun, so maybe it
Yeah.
was worth it. But I'm exhausted.
And I also can't say, like, I mean, there was definitely stress, but it's not only because of Nano, it's because I'm very good at taking on 10,000 things at once. And
Yeah,
Nano was
yeah,
just another part of it.
definitely. Yeah.
Um,
I'm very happy I did it. I'm very happy I managed to complete it. It was good fun.
okay. So I have written up a follow-up to, or a continuation of the story of Anuhea that we started in episode 2. And then you read out a second section of in our previous episode, so in episode 4.
Yeah.
So, and we can link to those excerpts down below.
So also, are
Mhm.
they in the show notes? I think they're in the show notes as well.
Yes, they are.
But I mean, listen to them instead.
A long dark crevice cut cleanly through the cliff face before her. Crystal torches glowing a pale blue light dotted the ice-covered walls. Anuhea's heart leapt. She had made it. Ignoring the groans of her aching legs, she launched herself forward, only to find herself suddenly yanked backward by her shoulder straps towards the mountain's edge. Flecks of hot spittle from the Willardash's putrid breath showered her face. Running on pure instinct, she whirled around to free herself from the straps of her pack and pummeled a kick into the oiled fabric just hard enough to send the beast tumbling over the icy ledge. She prayed the wind was too strong for it to use its wings. No time to lose. Anuhea sprinted up the passageway, feet slipping on the frozen ground. A sharp shriek behind her told her that her prayers had gone unanswered. Carved into the mountainside at the other end of the path was a stone door. Skidding up to it, she eyed the 3 bells of bronze, copper, and silver that hung on either side of the doorway, 6 in total. Rung in the correct pattern, and the door would open to her. Rung incorrectly, and it would remain closed to her forever, leaving her alone with the willowed ash. Anuhea's mind whirled as she tried to remember the wise woman's words.
I'm like, I don't even know what to. Oh my God, you wrote so much. I'm also like, the wilted ash's wings. Why didn't he use them earlier?
Because it's windy?
True. Oh yeah, you did say. You did say. The world building. Oh my God. It just. But she has not gotten into the temple yet, so I get to write that.
Exactly.
If
And
she
you get
gets
to
in.
figure out this thing with the bells. I think that's why I got so much, because I had this idea of like, ooh, puzzle that I wanted to write.
You realize we're building our own world together.
Yeah.
Like piece by piece. Oh, this is so exciting. I always get like, oh, okay. I will continue with that. You'll have to send me a transcript of that so that I can pick it apart and know what to use. That's exciting. Do you have any recommendations?
I do. So I am going to recommend this week The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin, which I have just finished. It doesn't take me much, it seems, to like books by N.K. Jemisin. I seem to really connect with her writing. There's something about her world building that feels very sophisticated and concrete to me, and really speaks to actually the kind of stories I want to tell. Like, so much that the first series I read by her, I actually had to like put it down and like not cry at the end, because I felt like she's already doing what I want to do but better. But this, actually reading this book really helped like actually me not feel like that, because now that I was expecting that kind of feeling, I actually just appreciated what she was doing instead. And I don't know, this book, it's got a bit of a slow build up, because she does a lot of world building in the first few chapters that can take a bit of time to get your head around. But once you get into it, it just keeps going. And basically it's like dream magic set in a fantasy world inspired by ancient Egypt. So
Ooh.
she's combined kind of like inspiration from old Egyptian religions and young philosophy into one. So like the premise of it is that there are these people called the Gatherers, who are trained magic users in a way, who they go around the city and they're assigned people to visit, and basically they visit people who are sick or corrupted as such, and basically it's their job to enter their dreams and sever their souls from their body and effectively send them off to the next realm. So yeah, and it's really interesting how she plays with that and the consequences of what happens when this skill is abused. And it's very interesting. She has a really interesting way of developing magic systems, like both in this and in Broken Earth. I've been like, this is, yeah, it's really fleshed out, and there's something that feels unique about them. So I highly recommend.
Oh, cool.
How do you have anything to recommend?
No, I mean, I just haven't been thinking about anything to recommend, but I am currently reading Gods and Monsters by Shelby Mahoran. Morin. I don't know how to say her name. Which is the third and final installment of the Serpent and Dove trilogy, and I'm enjoying it. I think what I'm really enjoying at the moment is that there's just the banter is just like, I was laughing out loud on the underground today, and it's not a comedy, but the characters, just the constellations of characters and the chemistry in the room when they're all together and talking, just like, I want to write that kind of witty dialogue. So it's just entertaining to read that at the moment. I wasn't actually going to bring it up as a recommendation as such, but I'm I'm really enjoying it at the moment. So I thought I'd just bring
This
that up.
section can be recommendations / what we're reading at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I find it's hard to recommend something if you haven't finished it,
Yeah.
because then like you don't, yeah. But I am enjoying the book for that particular, like the dialogue is quite entertaining and fun to read between characters, and I love writing dialogue, so it's a real treat.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's usually all we do during
Yeah.
the podcast, isn't it?
Pretty much. So I guess in that case, we say thank you for listening and hope to see you next time.
Yeah. I think this is our last episode for the year, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because I'm disappearing off to Sicily in like a week and a half.
So it is like the end of November, beginning of December, depending on when this is released. Enjoy if you go on holiday at the end of December for whatever reason, enjoy your holidays, and we will be back in January, and maybe, I don't know, are we going to set some goals or intentions or just talk? I don't know what we're going to do.
I don't know what we're going to do either, so we'll work it
decide
out.
then. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.